you got to be able to encourage that posture in any way that you can. And I see what they did in this workplace here. That is a great L-DOA stretch for any of the patients out there, and a beautiful chin tuck there.
It's a great way to get impingement syndrome with your shoulder too. All right, let's get her going.
Yeah, so last week we answered your questions. Thank you so much to everyone who sent in your questions, things that you wanted to learn a little bit more about. And it was great, the participation that we had. The feedback was excellent as well. You guys are clearly learning from these conversations because you're asking quality questions and giving us the opportunity to give you guys the best quality answers that we can.
Guys, give us a thumbs up if you'd want us to do that again. And if you do want us to do that again, make sure that when you think of a question, write it down. We will get it, whether it's a Facebook comment, if it's a YouTube comment, if it's a call, whatever it is, just send it to us along the way. And that way we're getting like a bank of questions together that we can then go on and do an open question right away, right? So definitely that'll help us have a bank of questions going. Yeah, thanks. Good. I think we want another one. So, all right. You started the show off there, buddy.
All right, guys. So tonight we are talking about ergonomics, right? The way that we're sitting, big word, ergonomics, the study of how, the body fits into the structures that are around it and all the mechanics. And so tonight we'll be talking about what is the correct position to be in, how can I correct, my workplace to make it feel more comfortable for myself, and how can I manage with stretching and strengthening routines at home to help manage some of these symptoms.
Yeah. No, this is, when you take a look at how much time we're spending now sitting at a desk, many of us think about getting a new mattress because our mattress starts to get on our nerves and we don't sleep very well and we wake up tired. But then many of us don't think about the other part of our day where we spend so much time in the same position, which is usually at our desk. So we're sedentary during the night and we're sedentary during the day, both of which we need to have good ergonomics and good posture. So a good mattress is all important. We've talked about that. But what about at work or at home now? How do things have to look? What do things have to change in order for you to have your back working for you and not at the end of the day go, holy geez, what kind of truck hit me? Because, you're feeling not just in pain, but fatigue, and you feel like you're just wanting to crash, right? So.
Oh, for sure. And being able to recognize these dysfunctional patterns and when you're feeling this way and knowing the structures that are involved will help normalize the status that you're feeling. And so like Dr. Roach said, just like we give recommendations for pillows and mattresses, there has to be a workplace recommendation as well to help encourage the structure that we're trying to create.
So listen to this. At the beginning of 2021, 32% of Canadian employees aged 15 to 69 worked most of their hours from home, compared to 4% in 2016. So 32%, 4% in 2016. Crazy.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah. So the result of poor ergonomics, we kind of want to go over, what happens when we don't change our workplace and we just succumb to our environment and become a product of it. So one of the conditions is called upper cross syndrome. So upper cross syndrome is when the shoulders begin to roll inwards towards the center, the head jets forward, and the muscles in the front become very, very tight. Dr. Roach, and that is a forward head posture. It looks something like this.
What happens in the upper cross syndrome, there are muscles that work together in sync. And when one is weak, the other one is weak. And when the other one is tight, the other one is tight. So when we take a look at what's going on up here with the traps. So how many people, during the day do this, right? And they'll grab their traps and they'll, move their head side to side. And they, I hear it all the time. Like, I carry the whole weight of the world in my shoulders. Well, the posture plays a big role in what you feel in your upper shoulders. So what happens is you are going to get some tight trapezius. And then what's going to happen at the same time, your pec muscles are going to get tight. Now, the thing with your pecs, they attach to your shoulder. So when they get tight, you start to roll your shoulders inward, and now the head starts to translate forward. Take it from here, Mr. Ben.
And then when the head begins to translate forward, what you begin to see is dysfunctional patterns in your movements because your structure is no longer aligned. You're starting to get that straightening of your spine and you become an environment. And what that does is it places an increased pressure on the structures, right? And so increased pressure on the disc in the spine, closing of the spaces for the nerves to exit, tighten muscles. And then what happens is when you try to straighten yourself out, you're all in pain because these muscles were stuck in these positions that they don't like for so long. And if anybody remembers way back when Dr. Roach and I, this might have been Hump Day Conversation 2 or 3, when we spoke about neck dysfunctions, when the head juts forward, the deep muscles in the neck aren't communicating with your head. They don't tell you where you are in space.
That's
So you
right.
could be sitting really far ahead for longer than 30 minutes, not even realizing that your head is jutting forward more and more and more.
So what happens, the head weighs approximately 10 to 12 pounds. Math and physics tells us that the longer the lever arm, so in other words, if you had a bowling ball and you had to carry the bowling ball for the rest of your life, would you carry the bowling ball close to you or would you carry it out here with an outstretched arm? Which one would create fatigue quicker? Carrying it over here or carrying it over there? Obviously is going to be to carry it out over here. So now your head has become a big bowling ball that's sitting way forward. And many times I'll have patients actually, they'll tell me, Ben, I feel like my head is too heavy for my body, right?
Yeah.
So what happens now, the deep neck flexors don't have the ability to bring the head back. These lower traps in serratus anterior aren't strong enough to bring the shoulders back. And now all of a sudden this goes on for years, and now you start to see structural damage to the spine, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so whenever I have a patient first come in, the first thing that I want to begin to restore is proper postural reorganization. And so we're working through these muscles and working to get them activated because when a muscle hasn't been turned on, the individual doesn't know what it's like to have it turned on. And when you start firing these muscles, it can feel a little weird, a little uncomfortable. They're like, oh, this is really the position that I'm supposed to be in.
Yeah.
And so, yes, but your structure is becoming rearranged by this environment. So you have to battle through that.
And then what happens when you start to activate those muscles, that part of the brain that relates to that muscle starts to light up again. And now the brain says, oh, yeah, that's right. There is that muscle. It does exist again. And now the brain starts to reinforce that pattern. So now bad posture feels like crap and good posture feels good, right? Instead of the opposite where slouching feels good. And when you try to straighten up, you get cramps and everything feels awkward. So yeah, great
Yeah,
slide. This
that's the upper cross.
picture is worth a thousand words, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So one thing leads to another, right? What ends up happening many times when you are in a slouch posture like this one, and you guys can do it right now. When you slouch and try to take a deep breath in, your diaphragm doesn't have room to go down as you take an inspiration and come back up when you exhale. So what ends up happening with poor posture, you are shallow breathing, really unbeknownst to you because you probably don't notice it. So now you're there for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours. And by the end of the day, you were shallow breathing pretty much a good part of the day. And what's happened over time is the muscles have become what's called hypoxic. So less oxygen made it to the muscle. Well, what does a hypoxic muscle look like? It's contracted. So it's in a shortened state. specifically the muscles in between the ribs called the intercostal muscles. So what ends up happening, the more shallow you breathe, the tighter the muscles in between the ribs become, the more you become slouch, the less you breathe, the more you become slouch. And it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. And over time, the more we shallow breathe, the less our cerebellum gets oxygen. The cerebellum, which is the part of the brain that controls your balance, is very oxygen dependent. Out of 100% oxygen that makes it to the brain, the cerebellum takes in 90%. And when the cerebellum doesn't get the oxygen that it needs, the cerebellum becomes very, very dysfunctional and you start to have balance issues. So that's why you see a lot of seniors that are slouched forward. They also, in tandem, don't have very good balance because they don't have the oxygenation going to the cerebellum. So, just a little bit of neurology in terms of how poor posture over time can lead to very detrimental changes that affect your quality of life.
Yep, absolutely. And that's why we want to be able to bring this up and just explain, it's more than just tight muscles. It has an impact on the rest of your body, and being able to express healthy spine is important to not just the way that you look, but how you feel on the inside.
Yeah, it's not just it's not just about the spine. It's about the ramifications of what the spine controls.
Yeah. And so the research has shown that people with ongoing mild to moderate neck pain and stiff neck muscles have problems using their lungs and respiratory system to the fullest of its capacity. And so just going back to what Dr. Roach said there, when the muscles shorten and they don't have the oxygen as well, when they're not being fed proper oxygen, the muscles are more likely to be in a contracted position and less likely to work properly.
Yeah. And one of the things too, when you're shallow breathing, one of the things that can result from that is going to be headaches. Now, the headache occurs because of that, because the muscles aren't getting the oxygen they need. So the back of the neck muscles become hypoxic. They tighten up and the head goes forward, more forward, more forward. And all of a sudden you got the tension in the back of the neck that can then relate to pain pretty much anywhere across the side of the face to the eye, because you're just, the muscles are just not getting any oxygen. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Cool. Guys, give us a few thumbs up if you've learned something so far, and maybe you're having a different outlook on how posture can be important more than you even thought, right? Because we sometimes say, oh, posture is important. Yeah, sure. But why? That totally, for me, drives me to look at my posture every day, because I just don't want my cerebellum to die when I'm 50 and I feel like I'm 70 because I've got balance issues, right?
Yeah, so the result of poor ergonomics continues. Lower cross syndrome. So
killing it with these slides, Ben. Great slides, bud.
I've got slides on slides on slides. And so the result of poor ergonomics, the lower cross syndrome, right? So lower cross syndrome is when you're sitting for a long period of time. The muscles in the front, just like an upper cross syndrome, the hip flexors will get really, really tight. The low back muscles will get really tight. Meanwhile, your abdomen, the core, is weakening, and your glute muscles in the back, which are supposed to help your hip maintain a healthy position, are also weakening as well.
So in case you guys aren't familiar with the word psoas, this is what we refer to as your hip flexor, okay? So what happens when you're sitting, because you're sitting most of the time at a 90-degree angle, the angle between your abdominal and your thigh makes it such that this iliopsoas is in a shortened position. So many times when people tell us, Ben, I have pain when I go to get up from a sitting position, the number one culprit is going to be this buddy right here. So what's happening is the psoas is really tight when you go to get up, because your psoas attaches to the spine. When you go to get up, it pulls on the lower back and creates low back pain. So the psoas is one of the number one things to look at when you go from sitting to standing and you have pain. Now, what else do you need to look? Well, based on this, you really should address all four, because as soon as you have, a table with four legs and one leg breaks, the three others are not going to make that table stand up tall. So any one of these that is dysfunctional is going to create dysfunction. So we want to make sure that we address all four, because just hitting one, and that's why sometimes people say, I got weak abs, I'm doing sit-ups. Well, that's just 1/4 of what really should be addressed. So this is super, super important.
Mm-hmm. And so if we go even deeper than, it attaching to the spine, what's the impact of having that tight psoas, and why is it causing me to have this low back pain? Well, when the psoas is tight, it causes your pelvis to tilt forward.
Yeah.
So the hips come forward like this. And just picture the low back is attached to it at the top. And so when the pelvis tilts forward, the low back gets compressed, and that leads to the pain that you feel when you're going from sit to stand, because they're already in that compressed positioning. And
Yeah.
because the low back extensors, low back muscles are also tight, they're going to add that increased compressive force onto that low back as well. So
Yeah.
you're getting a double whammy of two muscles pulling in two different directions, causing a compressive force on that low back.
Now, there are some people that already have like a big anterior pelvic tilt. They have like a deep curve in the lower back, which is not, might not be necessary because of a tight psoas, but if they're sitting now a lot, now that curve, you're just jamming the joints in the lower back like big time, right? So yeah, so this is, I mean, I can't tell people how important this is. Now, one thing that we need to understand is this psoas actually attaches to your diaphragm. Okay. So when you're there sitting in a slouch posture, shallow breathing, your diaphragm's going down, up more often versus when you're taking a deep breath and you're breathing maybe 12 breaths per minute. Now you're shallow breathing. So you're doing this maybe, 18, 21, 25 times. That psoas is also going. And by the end of the day, it's worked out all day long. So what happens when it gets fatigue, it goes short. So now the way that you're breathing is affecting your psoas, and the way you're sitting is affecting your psoas, and the way your psoas is behaving is affecting your low back pain. And it's the cycle of hell. And it's basically caused by the fact that you're sitting just way too much, and nobody's clearing that dysfunction for you as we would as chiropractors if you're not, visiting a chiropractor or somebody that can help you with that.
Yeah. So that is the lower cross syndrome.
So we have the upper cross syndrome, which affects the upper back, the neck going forward and backwards. And then we have the lower cross syndrome, which affects the angle of the pelvis and all the four things that basically create either hell or heaven in your lower back in terms of how you're sitting and what's going on in your lower back.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Another round of hands or thumbs up there if you're liking this, because I think without the why, there is no comply. If you're not compelled by the reason that you need good posture when you're sitting, you're probably not going to do it. But when you have an understanding as to what it can cause, now the why is a little bit more compelling, and you're able to say, okay, I can't, I understand now. This is going to create low back pain, so I got to watch my posture.
Yeah.
All right.
So these are a few tips to help reorganize your workplace to make things a little more easier on your body.
Yep.
And so place the monitor closer to you at arm's length away. When the monitor is too far away, you're going to have to strain your eyes to reach and see what it is that you're doing.
And what happens as we go closer, we don't realize, but it's done slowly. So the shoulders start to round forward, and all of a sudden we're almost kissing the screen. So yeah, you got to be careful about that.
Yeah. So your wrist should always be in a nice straightened position, and the hands should be at or below elbow level. You don't want to hold your hands too high because your wrist will begin to flex, right? And that will lead to a common issue known as carpal tunnel, right? So you want to stay away from positions such as those with your wrist, and keep your elbows at or below, the hands at or below the level of the elbows.
Yeah.
So
Elbow, one more thing, elbow hand, sorry, the elbow angle should be 90 degrees,
yeah,
right? So if your keyboard's too far up, then your elbow is not going to be at 90 degrees. So your arm should be right by your side, elbow at 90 degrees. And what ends up happening is sometimes the desk is too high. So unless you have an adjustable desk, you might have to play with the keyboard tray to lower where your hands are going to end up being. And also with the height of the monitor, your eyes should be 2/3 of the way up on the monitor. So now you might have to get, a book or something to place underneath your monitor so that you can raise the monitor. Now, again, that all gets solved if you've got a sit stand desk. But if you don't, you kind of have to, MacGyver your way to good ergonomics.
yeah, and be a little bit creative with your workstation. If you do have a sit to stand, or even if you don't, make sure you have enough room under your desk for you to move around freely, right? So you have space to move your legs, slide out or slide in if you have to get a little bit closer, and adjust adjust your chair height, and make sure you have your hair out of your face so you can see the monitor correctly. Adjust your chair height so your knees are level with your hips, right? So you
Yes.
don't want to be too high so that you're reaching for the floor. You don't want to be too low so that you're basically in a really deep seat, like a small seat. And you want to make sure your feet are nice and flat on the ground so you have a nice stable base of support. And my favorite one that I give to everyone, no matter what your workstation is, if you get up and move your body around and do a few exercises, a few stretches, that will save your back. It will
Yeah.
for sure save you, no matter what ergonomic position you have. If you work on the couch or if you work at a perfect station, both should be getting up and moving your back.
The best back, the one that sees a chiropractor, does everything that, needs to be done to stay healthy, eventually still does fatigue. You cannot expect to be at your desk and maintain good posture for an hour and a half, 2 hours. You have to be able to get up. And it doesn't have to be very long. It can be for 2 to 3 minutes, going to get water. It doesn't really matter what it is, but the best back will eventually fatigue. And 20 to 30 minutes is going to be the max that you want to sit without getting up. One thing that I always tell patients too, Ben, is if you don't want to invest in an somewhat more expensive chair, one thing that is important is good lumbar support, because when you don't have good lumbar support, your lower back starts to sink into the chair, and it's very hard to maintain good posture when your lower back is sinking into the chair. Now, as soon as you have good lumbar support, automatically your chest comes forward. So one thing you can do is roll up a beach towel and just put it in your lordotic curve, so where the back goes in right above your pelvis, and that will help support you. But again, 30 minutes, get up, move around, right?
For sure. Yeah. And so definitely this is something right now, if you guys are benefiting from this, or if you know of any businesses out there or people that are in business groups that could use some of these tips and tricks, ways to help improve um, their workplace ergonomics, then this would be the time to send that information out to them so they know it's available.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, so stretch the tight and strengthen the weak. This is one of the preliminary principle things to talk about when you're talking about trying to get something a little bit better and working on it by yourself. So for upper cross, the tight muscles are your pec, your upper trap, and your levator scapulae. So you can do the door frame stretch, right? The corner stretch. And by the way, I do have a document prepared for you guys with all of these exercises on them, but I just
Just
wanted to run
because we
through it
love you.
just because we love you guys. But I do want to run through why it is that you'll be doing these exercises or why it's good to start. So you want to stretch the tight muscles because it'll be able to take that pressure off of the front, especially in an upper cross syndrome where your pecs are so tight. You want to be able to stretch that area out. You're also going to find that your upper traps are going to become very tight, as well as your levator scapulae, which runs right from the corner of your shoulder blade all the way up to your occiput. So when your head gets forward, these muscles have to lengthen and they get stuck in a tight position. Now the
Yeah.
weak muscles are your deep neck flexors in here. They help straighten your neck. And so you want to be able to work on those, as well as your rhomboids. These are the two muscles that go along the back of your spine here, and they help to retract
Yeah, because
your
they attach the
abdomen.
shoulder blade to your spine, right?
That's right. That's right. So for lower cross, again, the muscles that are tight are your psoas and your lumbar extensors. You want to be able to stretch those out, and your abdominals are weak. So yeah, I am going to give a few core exercises here to you guys to do some core. And then also the glutes, you'll have to work on those buttock muscles, right? So we recommend clamshells or monster walks. You can do these without the resistance band or with, if you prefer to have a little bit more of a burden.
Cool. So just to be, this is the last slide, right? Yeah. So just to be clear, we are going to share with you, if you give us some hearts and thumbs up and you promise to share this episode, and I'd like to say that we can track everybody that shares, but we cannot. But if you share this episode, it would be greatly appreciated. And for that, we are going to put a link in the comment section. Once you click on that link, you have your posture program done for you that you can use at home or at work, prescribed by, I'd like to say, brilliant chiropractor, Ben Boudreau. And that way you can utilize that, have it at your desk, and not be caught shorthanded in 5 years from now and be the result of 5 years, 10 years, 15 years of poor posture. And now you go to stand up and you look like you're still sitting at your desk because your posture is so poor, right? And it's very hard to go back over the years. When we see patients, God forbid, they're 55, 60, 65, 70, and it's very hard to make structural changes when they've been sitting their whole life not doing the exercise that we're sharing with you guys. So you basically just have to click. It's a Google Drive document. When you click, it'll bring you to those exercises. There's 3 pages. You can print them off. Now, Ben, how long when they start and then they finish, are these exercises going to, take 3 hours?
No, guys. So these exercises, both meant for the upper cross and for the lower cross, I have them so that I have all the sets and reps next to it. I would say total, this may take you, geez, maybe 5 minutes, maybe to do the whole thing. And it could be less than that. And so whenever I give exercises, a lot of my patients know I'm not really a sets versus reps kind of guy. I'm very much about, I want you to incorporate this into your lifestyle. I want you to think about how important it is that you are doing this and why you're doing this. What is the reason for why am I doing this? Why should I wake up in the morning and do it first thing? Why should I do it in the afternoon? And why should I do it before I go to bed? Right?
Yeah.
Think about why you want it.
Yeah. So when you guys are doing those, think back about what we said. Like, what is the impact of you not doing it? Right? Do you really want to look back 5 years from now saying, all right, now I've retired, now I got to fix my back? And how many times do I hear that? You're looking for the golden nugget at that point, and the one big fix, where the fix comes from you being repetitive in doing the things that you need to do every single day. 5 minutes. If you don't have 5 minutes during the day to take care of yourself, you have no life. You have to value your health, to spend 5 minutes making sure that you can maintain what keeps you alive, which is your spine and nervous system. So take it seriously. Download that document. Make sure you share the episode. Print it off. Have it in front of you. So what's out of sight is out of mind. If it's not in front of you, you're going to forget, right? Same thing with water. Have your water right there. Hydration is so key. We didn't touch on that tonight at all, but hydration is so key. Have it right there, right? Just like I have it when I work in my station. I got my water right there. So, yeah.
So to reiterate as well, I just put the sort of the plan into the comment section. So go ahead and click it, and you guys can use it and print it off and do whatever you want to do with it. Like I said, I did put the reps and sets and the duration and time there as well. These are recommendations that I'm making based off of something that is easily accomplished.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can increase the amount that you do it. You can do it every 5 minutes if you want.
Yeah.
But the idea is to create that routine. There's an entire technique devoted to creating perfect posture and being mindful in your posture. It's called the Alexander technique. And so if you're interested in learning more about that and how it's incorporated into chiropractic, you can always check that out as well. It's a beautiful thing. Posture, once you rediscover what it means to have excellent posture, you'll know I'll never be able to go back to where I used to be. I can't believe it was like that. And we talk about this each and every day with our patients. I couldn't believe that I was living with that amount of stress on my spine every day. And look at how much stress I relieved from my spine by straightening it out. It's amazing.
Yeah. And you know what? Like posture is something, like posture is an investment, right? Working on your posture is something that's, how many of you want to look like, the older people that you see with the large hump on the back of their necks? I know we talk about the hump every day. I guess maybe that's why we call it hump day, right? Hump day conversation. But nobody wants to look like that. And when we're looking at posture, and I mentioned that you're starting to get a hump, I get that look of despair. I'm like, no, are you telling me I've got that hump? Really? So, the way to do that is to prevent that over time, right? And work on it. Anything you work on starts, you're going to have results. So don't expect it overnight, and make sure that you're consistent with 30 minutes. Get up, walk around, make sure you do your exercises that we've shown you. Like, you literally have to pay somebody to give you those exercises. You go to a physio, you go somewhere, and it's prescribed. We're giving it to you. So share this episode to your groups or whatever, because so many people are working from home right now and they may not have access to this episode. So they don't know. So they're suffering, and you're there to help them by sharing this episode and pointing them to the comment section where the document is, and they can just use that. We just want to help them, right? So make sure you do that.
Yeah, we just want to be able to share the knowledge out there, give something to you guys, because in clinic, exercise is a little bit of the grand photo, right? We're trying to create these routines, and so we just want to be able to give you guys something that when you do come to clinic, the spine is a little more mobile, in a better position for us to adjust and give a more favorable adjustment to you. And so by all means, use the exercises, share with your friends, and we just want to create happy, healthy spines for everyone. So that's
Yeah.
the goal.
Yeah. So definitely when you're doing that, keep in mind the why, right? These exercises take care of the upper cross and the lower cross. And we've incorporated exercises for the weak and stretches for the tight. So definitely you want to do that way. And that way you're serving every aspect of the muscles that keep you upright, good posture, breathing properly, and holding your head over your shoulders.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you guys enjoyed this hump day conversation, please give us some thumbs ups, because of course I love making these for you guys. And Dr. Roach comes up with conversations each and every single week, without fail. He is a breath of fresh air and a man filled with knowledge. And so we're lucky to be able to share these conversations every week and talk to each other. So we appreciate you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys. And maybe I think about these topics because I just want to learn from you, Ben. This is like
Well, we're learning from each other, and especially now because we're both busy. I don't get to chit chat with you as much anymore as I used to.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, that's a good thing, right? You got to get your hands on people in order to help them. So, yeah, cool. We got a few comments here, so that's great. Some of the comments we can't get to during the show, but we definitely do our best to respond to all of them once we're offline. So, if you have any questions, again, we're going to do another open question soon. If this is on YouTube, the document is going to be in the description part, so you'll be able to download it there. In Facebook right now, it's in the comments section, so just look for that. Maybe you can post it again, Ben, so it's multiple.
Yeah, I will do that. And yes, feel free to pick my brain.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and if you guys, we can also print it off at the clinic. And for those of you who have a hard time printing off, don't have a printer or whatever, we can print it off at the clinic, and you can, get it at the clinic. All right. Any closing remarks, Ben?
I mean, keep your spines healthy. Don't forget to get up every 30 minutes. I think that's the biggest takeaway. And as well, I believe there's some published research to say that that is supported by the evidence that you're less likely, to have workplace injuries from sitting and have less stress if you just get up every 30 minutes and move around. And it's even better when you have a stretch routine that you can sort of do to kind of work that in. Plus,
Totally.
if you do exercise at work, you're more likely to be, you're more active, right?
Yeah.
So make sure that you're feeding your brain with oxygen. Your cerebellum is constantly eating up that O2.
And you don't get that, 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, like starting to doze off because your brain's not getting oxygen, right? Yeah. So guys, thank you so much. Guys, stay positive in all this. We're all in this together. We know it's tough times. And we were actually looking forward to all of this because, it allows us to connect with you guys and, not have to, which I don't anymore, but not have to listen to the news. And, we're kind of in our little bubble here, if you want, with you guys. And we actually love doing this and doing what we love, which is sharing information. I love to learn. I love to research. Ben, it's the same way. And then to have you guys come into the clinic and express your gratitude for what we do, it's just the icing on the cake. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. And we will see you next week for Hump Day Conversation number 22. And we will share that topic throughout the week. And if you don't follow us, make sure you're following us. And that way you know what topics we're talking about, because we do little Facebook Lives here and there. There is a difference between liking and following. Liking just means you're going to get on our page, but following, as soon as we're live, you get a little notification that says that we're live, and you can figure out what these two kids are talking about. All right.
Also, just one last thing to add. If there are any topics, right? If there are any questions that you have, forward the questions in. The earlier we get the questions in, the earlier we can get the answers, and then we can deliver those to you as promptly as possible. Also, if we're collecting questions for a Q&A once a month, we'd like to have those in advance and deliver the best answers to you.
Absolutely.
And that's all I have to say.
Right on. So thank you very much, guys. We had a lot of people live tonight. Love you and appreciate you again. Make sure you share, follow our page. If you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our channel. So with that, Dr. Ben and Dr. Clayton saying good night. Take care. Stay positive in all this, guys, and we look forward to next week.
What's up, guys? Listen, if you like this episode, you'll probably like the other ones. Chances are pretty good, so here's what you need to do. You need to like us and follow us on Facebook. Following means you get notified when these two guys are live. Next, family, friends. You need to share these episodes because you never know. You might help them because they need this information as well.
And guys, if you ever miss an episode, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. That way you can watch the episode over and over and over again.
Guys, we love you and appreciate you.
Take care.